Hi, Antoine.
Hi, Jane. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Very, very good.
Cool. Please give us a few more minutes. We are waiting for our student, and then we can start to have it at the.
I love your background.
Thank you. Yeah, this is what is it called? The Millennium Falcon from Star Wars. Right.
Very good. Star Wars fan.
Yes. Cool. Okay. Yeah, and also today we have a Q&A after I ask question to Antoine. So up to that time, you guys can mute yourself, and then going to open up the question to everyone. Just like a quickly introduce or explain what we are working on during this summer is basically to you, Antoine, is yeah, this is like an AI lab that we started to do since last year. Originally, it's held between Massa Foundation and Minerva University. That's based in San Francisco, and then basically, powered by DeepCore. That's under SoftBank's AI fund. And today we have teams from DeepCore as well. And then me myself, I just started to help them since last year as a mentor, and then this year started to get involved to more in order to run the program together with them. And then this is the fireside chat event is the more like inviting AI influencer from the industry, especially like founders or like VCs, professors, and then that's we wanted to hear based on your experience and how you think about AI. And especially your case is like you are ex-founders, now is VC. That's the type of the question I made a list before.
That sounds good.
Yeah, and then also just to give a heads up, a bunch of the students are actually from the US. So in terms of the time zone, they couldn't join. So I am recording this interview and then going to share with them later. Is that okay to you? Okay.
Yeah, of course. No worries.
Cool. So in that case, I guess probably everybody has a school or like a time zone is like a midnight or something. So we can start to do it now. So yeah, again, yeah, I'm very glad that we have a chance to talk about your wonderful startup journey and to hear about your experience. Just to give a quick intro about Antoine, he is a founder and managing partner at Alpha Intelligence Capital. I believe that's based in Hong Kong and San Francisco.
That's right. It's a European domiciled fund, but the team is primarily based out of Hong Kong and San Francisco.
I see. Okay, cool. And then he was previously a founder at several different startups. His career highlights include leading Dejima as a CEO, the company that powered DARPA's foundational CALO project that later evolved into Apple's Siri. And Antoine also was CEO at the Zi Corporation, whose smart text input software was embedded into hundreds of millions of devices. Without further ado, let's also start the event. First of all, thanks for joining today, Antoine. And I have a few questions that I created, so we can just follow this diagram, and then we are going to open up the question to everyone later. Cool. So yeah, how did you get involved? How did you first get involved into startup in your career?
So I used to work for large corporations at the beginning of my career, and then in the late 90s, 98 or thereabout, the company that I was working for was at the time was called Nortel Networks. I was one of the big telecom equipment company. They got sold, or the division in which I was sold to Nokia, and in the process, I wasn't sure I wanted to transition to Nokia, and I was looking, and then folks approached me, and the approach was, do you want to join a small, 20, 25 people startup, and are you willing to try to take it and to try to run it and scale it? And I agreed, and it was a complete happenstance. It was just a trial. I wasn't sure what I was getting myself into, to be honest. I was moving from a company that had 50,000 people or more to 25. It was interesting, and but then everything clicked very quickly. So we went from 25 people to 300 in 2 years. We did a reverse listing on the Nasdaq, and our share price got up to pretty high level, and then the company got to roughly $1.5 billion market cap from, when I joined, was about 25 million.
Wow.
So we had a very, very good, successful time, and it was my first foray into algorithmic science. I've always been interested in technology. I was programming at a very young age, but the idea was, can we build a business out of algorithmic science? And we did at that point. It was Zi Corporation.
Right.
And from that time on, I just never stopped being interested in taking small, early stage businesses and scaling them. That's what I've done ever since.
Wow. So that company grew from 25 million to over a 1 billion cap.
Yeah, in about 2 years.
Oh, wow. Is it like a before 2000? That .com platform?
Yeah, so it was 2000. So we were in some way, we were lucky to be part of that bubble, but unlike most of that bubble time companies, which, at the time, all of these companies didn't have any revenue. Our business model was not based on eyeballs. It was based on actual licensing software. And we used to license to the Ericssons and Nokias and the Siemenses and the Motorola's of the world to their cell phone division. And we used to make between 25 cents and $1 per handset. And we did very well. So we were one of the 2 companies that really started predictive text entry. So as you type a word, the word is predicted, the sentence is predicted. And at the time when SMS was taking off, operators were looking for ways to enter text faster. We had a solution in multiple languages, and so we talk about having the right technology at the right time.
Right.
And in 2 years we went from 1 client to 30, and so we had real revenue, and that's kind of helped us grow into a large valuation.
I see. Oh, wow. It's like a blitz scaling startup. I think it must be like a crazy journey. Also, like I when I did the research about your careers, I noticed that actually you study at the Chuo University that's based here in Japan, and I'm kind of curious, how did you decide to study abroad? And also, like, you have MBA as well. And can you tell us about the experience translated to your work in the startup and the VC world as well, in that sense?
So, first of all, I'm quite a bit older than you. so when I went to study in Japan, it was the late 80s, and at the time Japan was really a very interesting place to be in. It was I was looking for something to challenge me, and I thought Japan would be a great place to do that, and indeed it was. It was fantastic. So I went to study there as part of an exchange program, and I really enjoyed it. And then I eventually ended up staying in Japan for another 5 years or so after that. And I've got great memories of that. And it's always been Japan has always been very very kind to me. So as to what I learned at school, and whether it was useful to me in my work. And to be honest, very little. Most of what I learned academically, I had never used. I've used math and physics because that's useful when you work on algorithmic science problems. But honestly, you really don't need to go to college to do that. But what I really took from university was the social aspect and the challenge that comes with that. How do you learn to grow into a human being that can work successfully with other people from vastly different backgrounds, and how do you together through debate, conflict, and resolution of that, you actually built a better course of action, a better path to success. That I think I took from university, and that has served me ever since. So more the social aspects really, and sort of the leadership or HR related aspects of that have been more useful to me than the pure academics, if you will.
I see. How was in that sense, like how was the experience of MBA? Because also like at that time MBA was quite early, like probably after like 2010 stuff, like everybody MBA become quite kind of more like normal for a lot of people, but probably when you took it, still like early kind of like a behavior to pursue like academic sort of like a business, right?
Yeah, I was always interested in how the world works, and the world works through laws of nature, so biology and physics and math, which we can use to explain how the world works. But then at the societal aspect, how we humans organize the world, then you need to understand the human sciences aspects of the world, and that's history, geography, and then everything that relates to business and law and all that. The constructs that humans have put in place to organize the world. And so, and I felt that, as someone who was, deep into science, I felt that having that extra layer would help me eventually do what I wanted to do, which is to create businesses and build businesses on top of science. So that's why I did it. And it was very interesting.
I see. That's awesome. And also like one of the highlight of your career is obviously Dejima. Actually, it's a Japanese word, right? It's a
Japanese
island.
name.
Yeah, it's an island. Yeah, it's Japanese name, and which become a part of Apple's Siri. And can you explain to us what you worked on that time and how? I believe that was acquisition happened, and how it became a part of like a Siri. What's that kind of like transition at that point?
Yeah, so the story of Siri is very interesting, and it's in some way it's a story of how technology and luck and business and governments, all these aspects interact. So the genesis of all of this was a company called Dejima, which was started at the end of the 90s in the Silicon Valley. It was based on research that had been done by a very close friend of mine who had been building knowledge graphs. At the time, they were not called knowledge graphs. They were called agent networks. And he had built knowledge graphs and technologies to improve those knowledge graphs over time using evolutionary computation, and then applying this to solving natural language processing. And I was called in 2000, and I went to see him and his company, and I was very interested. I saw everybody's tried to solve NLP, and people think of it as a grammar based issue. So if you understand grammar, you'll understand that. But at that company thought of it as not a grammar problem, but a semantic problem. So if you understand the semantics of the domain, then you'll understand the how to interact with that domain natural language. And that's what the company did. And at the time, no one had done anything remotely close to a knowledge graph approach. And so we started to build that. We had a number of clients early on, people like Toyota, like Salesforce, like Oracle. Then the catalyst was DARPA. So the defense the department came up with this project. It was a massive project, started in 2003. It was a $250 million, I'm sorry, in funding, so a very large project. And the idea was, can you create an intelligent assistant that's going to help not just soldiers in the field, but also people in the office. So obviously soldiers in the field, they have to command and control increasingly complex systems, but they've got a lot of other things to do than just to type on keyboards. So is it possible to give them an interface that's going to be able to react to their language? And so if you do it for the office, for the soldiers, why not do it for people in the office? That was the idea. And DARPA came to SRI International in Menlo Park and gave them or granted them the ownership and the management of the contract. And SRI went around the valley to look for companies that could help them productize this. And at the time, we were the only one really that had anything remotely close to what they were looking for. So so we ended up contracting with SRI. We became the main provider of technology to the project. In fact, our VP of engineering even transferred to SRI to run the project. And that project lasted 5 years until 2008, and it was delivered to DARPA. And really, that was, in effect, what became Siri. Toward the end of the project, SRI asked whether the project could be, the civilian aspect of it could be spun off into a company, and that led to Siri. So Siri was effectively a spin-off of SRI without technology in it. In the meantime, we had sold ourselves to Sybase, which is now part of SAP, so that's a long story. But in any case, the Siri spin-off was then bought by Apple. And most, our technology and our team, a good chunk of it ended up at Apple. Right. So it's a very interesting story because this is technology that we had 20 years ago, right? And it made it to a mainstream product about 9-10 years ago, right? When Apple decided to release it. And it really became mainstream across all platforms, I would say 3-4 years ago, right? So it took about 15 years for this technology to become mainstream, which is, if you think about it, it's quite a long time.
Yeah, 100%. But by the way, do you use Siri like a daily base now?
Good question. Actually, I don't use an iPhone. There you go.
Oh, okay. Because I use Siri, and then my home I have a Google Assistant. But actually, my Asian accent, Google Assistant can understand my accent better than Siri. So I use Google more now.
Well, if you ask me, I think the Siri was under invested in at Apple. Apple had a massive head start on competition, but didn't quite realize what they could do with it. I think the leadership of Apple, and Steve Jobs in particular, when he decided to buy, he was the one to decide, understood what it was, but then it is just much more than an interface, right? It can be really an OS or an access mechanism to the internet if you actually make it multimodal and if you productize it properly. But I think he was the one to understand, but I think it got lost after his departure into the Apple maze and didn't get the attention it deserved. And I think it eventually did get it, but it was a little too late. And so I think Apple does a lot of great things, but in this particular case, they could have done better.
Yeah, that's also, I feel it too. All right, cool. Yeah, also please tell us about your transition from being a startup founder to VC.
About 3 years ago, after having run 3 startups, I thought, maybe it's time to do something else. And doing something else, to me at least, means being intellectually challenged, right? And so I thought, well, the beach option will not challenge me, so let's try to do something else. So initially, I was just interested in building a club. A partner of mine and I decided to get together, and then we put some of our own money in, and we got some of our sort of friends and family money to start a club that would invest in the type of companies that I think we can help. So algorithmic science-based companies. And lo and behold, this became quite interesting to a few people. So instead of building a club, eventually we built a real fund. And then now it's a couple $100 million. There's a team, there's multiple sites, and we invest globally. And so that transition to me was initially, let's try to explore, see whether we'll have fun doing this, and it's become a real mandate now. And it's in some way it's like building a firm, right? It's highly entrepreneurial.
Right.
It's not the same stakes, right? The outcome of a company is very binary, 1 or 0. The outcome of the fund is essentially a performance. But as far as the work of building a team, putting together a vision and executing against that vision, that is very similar to building a company. So in that sense, it feels a bit like our own startup as well.
Right, I see. So in that sense, basically deep into your fund, Alpha Intelligence, and can you tell us about your fund? Because basically this AI lab, we are at this moment there are 3 AI related to startup ideas, and also there are a few side projects as well. Also it'd be great that's we could hear what you guys are working on now.
Yeah, so maybe I'll tell you a bit what we do. So we invest in deep technology, machine learning based companies. So people who have not just the ability to productize applications and operationalize businesses, but companies that also on top of that have a deep technology foundation in the machine learning and AI space. And we do that because we believe that companies that have that the understanding of the capabilities and the limitations of the underlying algorithmic science are going to be better at developing performing products, and it will shorten the learning curve to a successful business. And so we look for people who have 5, 10, 15 years of experience building products, so developing technologies and building products and businesses on top of these technologies. So not people just right out of college. And those people are not that many, right? There's still, people who've done it for 5, 10, 15 years in a machine learning space are not that many. So we're, it's a fairly restricted amount of companies, but it forces us to be highly disciplined when we look at firms globally. That's what we do. We do it globally. I would say slightly over 50% of our investments are in the US. And we've got investments in China, in France, in the UK, and in Israel so far.
I see. And then mainly stage-wise, the Series A or Series, do you focus any specific stage?
So, yeah, so we tend to focus on Series A and B. That is 75% of our investments. And then we have 25-30% of our investments are later stage, so Series C, D, E. It's important for us to also be exposed to later stages because we want to see how companies scale, how companies that are based on algorithmic science can scale into businesses, because we want to use those learnings to apply to the companies that are earlier stage in our portfolio.
Right, I see. Yeah, so I guess like this is related to your technical background as well, but like why did your company or firm choose to invest especially in AI and deep tech?
Well, so as you say, it's really because of our background, and we feel that we can better understand better than most what is real, what is not real, in terms of the technologies that we encounter, number one, and number two, whether what is real can then be successfully translated into products and businesses, because we've had that experience several times. So with that in mind, we think we have a better understanding and also can build a better rapport with companies. We understand the problems faster, perhaps, than most VCs. We can relate, and hopefully we can contribute in terms of productization, so technology development choices, but also productization as well as operationalizing of businesses. Because building an AI-based company is not the same as building an internet business or a cloud-based business. There's a number of idiosyncrasies in the way you built it, the way you think about your business models, all of that can be quite different. And I think we've got something to offer there that few people can offer.
Right, I see. That's great. That's like a startup can get investment from you guys because you guys have an experience, and then it's always great to get investment from the right investors, right? So
we try.
All right, this is actually like a next question. It's like just like a personal curiosity, and I actually wanted to hear your thought. What do you think about AI singularity in general?
Yeah. So look, I'm a big believer in machine intelligence, obviously. Whether machine intelligence will supplant human intelligence is I don't know. I think that in my view, there's a clear path towards two things. First, machine intelligence progressively taking over human intelligence in a number of tasks. It's already happening. And also human intelligence being greatly augmented by machine intelligence. So where our leverage as human beings become so much greater because we've got all these tools at our disposal. If you extrapolate from this, eventually you can think of machine intelligence being able to take over everything and anything. And I think that's theoretically possible, but I don't necessarily believe that it is a question of machine intelligence overtaking human intelligence. I think it's more about that merger of the two that becomes very hard to distinguish at some point. And whether it's human or machine, you're not quite sure anymore. And we humans will become so much comfortable at that point and so much used to leveraging machines, and very naturally so, that it will almost feel like that machine is actually human, right? So it will be much harder for us to distinguish. And so I think it's more about symbiosis and how this eventually merge than them competing. But the future will tell.
Right. And there are some people talking about there must be a conflict between a human work and the human intelligence and the AI intelligence too, right? And then some people are saying basically AI and basically software is going to take over the humans' work. And how can AI and human we work together in the future? What would you suggest to people in general?
Right. So look, first, it's a question of understanding. I think there's a lot of confusion and misunderstanding as to what AI truly is. And because people look at this as sort of a black box problem, then the fear of the unknown dominates, and things like, well, it's going to take over our jobs, or turn us into permanent vacationers, and we'll be in our virtual world doing video games and we won't do anything else. None of that, I believe, will be completely true. What I believe is that we are going to get ever more comfortable with the adoption of technology, as long as it gives us demonstrable benefits, such as productivity gains, such as a longer life, such as just a healthier, more fruitful, and a wealthier lifestyle, right? All of that. And in the meantime, where societies will have to work on and individuals will have to work on is being able to adapt. That has nothing to do with AI per se. I think AI is just a compounding factor, but it has to do with the rise of a technology-enabled world where every day brings a new level of innovation, a new innovation, a new transformation. And if we humans are fearful of change and fearful of having to adapt, then of course it's going to be hard. And so, we used to think of this world where you start to be educated at age 3 or 4, and then you end your education at age 18 to age 28, depending on what kind of education you achieve. That world will no longer exist. You will learn every day. And if you're not dedicating yourself to learning a little bit every day, then you'll become irrelevant. And I think societies have to switch their understanding of that. It's hard, and that's the challenge. But if we do it right, then we will coexist. We will embrace the advantages and benefits that technology brings, as opposed to resist it. Right. But no, it's not going to be easy. And so there'll be, before that actually happens, there'll be a lot of conflict, and humans will have to really work hard on their fear of adapting, fear of change. Humans inherently are fearful of change, and we need to change that.
Yeah, interesting. Because it sounds like it may be, if we take a wrong action, it might be going to be some kind of a Skynet situation, Terminator movie. But as long as if we try to adjust ourselves first and trying to adjust our life and everything to educate ourselves first, in that case, probably we can find out a way how we can improve our life, and then we can use basically new software to improve our life.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, this kind of scenario, I think, can always be there. I think, more likely, you'll have abuses of power that will be fueled by technology. So humans will leverage technology to, and they're already doing that, right, to more power, right? And that will have to be kept on. I think that I think I'm more concerned, to be honest, about humans' misuse of technology as opposed to machines' own misuse of technology.
Right.
I'm more concerned about the former.
I see. So yeah, actually, the next question is like related to that one. And how do you think that this like a current situation, pandemics will change human life, especially like post-corona? And then any interesting use case or technology for coronavirus that you have seen recently?
Yeah. So obviously, I mean, you've heard this left and right. The pandemic is accelerating a number of trends towards digitalization of the economy and virtualization. That's for sure. And I think it's fascinating to see that very traditional businesses are very quickly embracing that forced digital transformation because in practice they have no choice. So that's and it's going to come back, right? So after the pandemic, some businesses and some organizations will revert to some of what they used to do, but it will not be 100% reversion. They'll be the whole world is progressing much faster towards virtualization and digitalization because of this. Now, about use cases, so there's many, but I'll use one which is really quite interesting because it has to do with humans. So large, especially large organizations, big businesses that have 10, 20, 50, 100, 200,000 employees, they have two problems. Problem number one, they've stopped hiring from the outside, right? Because you can't really have meaningful interviews anymore. I mean, you can't meet people face to face, so it's much harder to hire from the outside. So they have to understand when they want to staff new projects or create new divisions, they have to understand the nature of the workforce that they have and try to make do with who they have internally. So that's the first thing. Second thing, in these companies, because of the pandemic, some divisions have done really well and some divisions have done very poorly. And so you begin to see in those businesses very sudden major imbalances
Right.
in those groups. And so they have to reallocate resources from one to the other. And for that, they also need to understand much better fashion than before who they have internally to effectively rebalance their business properly. And so this is driving the need for a real, very thorough understanding, semantic understanding of what your workforce is, what kind of skills you have, whether you can put teams together, what is the EQ of people. So it's not just a skill set, but also the EQ, right? And so for example, we're looking at companies that have really invested in inner mobility, so using machine learning to extract deep semantics of their workforce and build predictive concepts for team building and rebalancing the workforce within large organizations. That's something that honestly didn't exist 2 years ago, and that's being that started maybe a year and a half ago, and it's now really being fostered and massively accelerated by the pandemic. Just one use case, but there are many others, of course.
Right. Yeah, I mean, 100%, because I mean, ideally better to work in remote, but there was no reason before, but now we have to, because otherwise it's just like a problem, right? I mean, you cannot travel, you cannot have like a physical meeting, so you just need to have like more like a change behavior like a battery, right? So do you like recently invested like that type of like a startup, or can you tell us any of like a recent investment that you made in publicly?
Yeah, I can tell you we made a couple recent investments. Most of them are really interesting. Our last 2 investments are one in California in a company called Drishti that does computer vision augmented tracking of human based workflows on manufacturing floor. So when people, 95% of manufacturing is still actually done by humans, right? The world over, even in Japan, even in the US, there's still a tremendous amount of people in factories, and of course that is compounded in China, and other countries. So, and yet the understanding of how humans actually assemble systems and perform their tasks is still very limited. So typically you only understand whether a product is defective after it's been built. And sometimes not only after it's been built, but also after it's been built and shipped and used, or misused, right? The usage doesn't work. So, what this company does is that it puts cameras, and it actually, in real time, tracks how people actually effect their tasks within a defined workflow, and is able to semantically identify each task in a workflow, and if there's a problem, be able to, in real time, to advise, look, you forgot to screw this particular screw here, or this is not the right angle, or it can record this so that it can give the worker in real time some feedback. It can build statistics across the entire manufacturing floor. It can also record all these workflows so that later on, let's say you've got, there's quite often companies have to recall cars because of a defect.
Yeah.
So they can trace this back, right, to, this particular way we were installing this particular part at this particular time was wrong. And they can very quickly drill into these issues over time. So very interesting company, very successful. So we made that investment. And it's the merger of, it's how here technology is helping humans perform, essentially.
Right.
Without taking over their job, in fact, in this case, it's really helping them perform. Another company we've invested in recently in the UK is in building very advanced probabilistic models for cyber security insurance and reinsurance, which is historically a very hard problem because history in cybersecurity doesn't repeat itself, right? Hackers will always come up with new approaches. And so you have to come up with different types of algorithmic models to develop compelling, insurance and reinsurance models. And this company is already a leader in the reinsurance space for cybersecurity and becoming one in insurance. So this one is in the UK. So those are just 2 examples of what we're investing in.
I see. Okay. No, that's awesome. Oh. Just like a last question. After that, we are going to open up to the question to you guys. This is actually more like a career type of advice. What do you wish you knew at the beginning of your career that you know now as a startup founder and the investor as well?
I wished I knew to trust my gut feeling better. I find that we all of us make mistakes. Very often, our initial reaction, our gut feel, is right, and as control people, as people who want to rationalize every decision, we sometimes tend to distrust that, and we tend to think, well, look, haven't analyzed it enough, or maybe there's a reason for it, and maybe I can overcome that. And so eventually, at the very least, you take a longer time to make that decision, which you should have made way before, saving you a lot of heartache. Or you eventually make the wrong decision just because you didn't trust your gut. So that's an advice. Whether it is about people, about decisions, about processes, do trust your gut. Go with your gut first. And doesn't mean you should not think twice, right? But do trust your gut. More often than not, it's going to save you a lot of time and a lot of heartache.
Why, like, you feel that way? Because I feel there must be like some example experiences.
Oh, there are many examples, yeah. but it's just you know, it's when you're young. Sometimes you lack confidence in your ability to decide because you think you don't have enough experience, or even when you're older, because it's a new problem or something you've never seen before. You're just doing the same thing. You say, "Oh yeah, I don't know about it." So let me just think it over and over again. The point is, no, as humans, we've built those sort of built-in decision-making processes that are sometimes a little intuitive, and we should trust them. So I can tell you, give you many examples. Partnerships that I've done, people that I've hired, people that I didn't fire, decisions that I made, and they looked very good at that time, and they looked very rational, and they made sense logically, but they sometimes didn't pass the smell test gut feeling wise. And in hindsight, go with your gut.
I see. Okay, that'd be awesome. Wow. Sorry, last question. Any suggestion or advice to AI startup founders?
Yeah, two things. To me, the biggest issue in building an AI startup is marrying successfully the technology with the problem. And it's always that marriage that's difficult to achieve. And so if you're a technologist, make sure that you team up with a very strong domain expert who can tell you which problem you need to solve and which problem is going to make you money. If you're a domain expert, and that's what's your forte is, make sure you partner with a very strong technologist who can actually tell you what the technology can do and cannot do. Cannot do is equally important as what it can do. Because when you know what it cannot do, you're not going to go and explore dead ends. It's very important. So to me, that's the key. Ideally, you're both in one person, but it's hard to get. I mean, it's very hard. It's not often the case that someone is both a very good and deep technologist and a strong domain expert. So my advice is always establish that partnership and establish it at a level of trust that you can tell each other everything, and engineer the feedback loop between the domain and the technology, that constant loop, engineer it at a human level first, because that's going to get you to scale the speed of your feedback loop. And the faster you scale that feedback loop, faster it is, the faster your road to building a business and a successful one.
I see. Actually, that's I'm very happy to hear that this program, we intentionally, before building product, we intentionally having a user interview with a potential user and customer to identify the deep problem first, and then think about if that's a problem that's we can build as a product. That's like what we are doing now. Cool. Right. Yeah. So so from here, I'm going to open up to the question from audience. If anyone have a question.
Hi, I have a question.
Okay.
Uh, oh, yeah.
Go ahead,
Hi,
Tom.
Antoine. Yeah, thank you so much for having this talk. It's really nice and really cool to listen to your experience. I have a question regarding to alpha intelligence. And when you mentioned that you invested in companies, both in like the US, San Francisco based, and also in Hong Kong. So what's the difference? Is there any difference between the startups scenes in the two sides? And you also mentioned that you invested in like deep algorithmic AI machine learning models. So how about the ideas and how do you evaluate the ideas underlying those technology as well? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So first, differences and similarities. So so our investments are U.S., as I said, France, UK, Israel, China. We try to have a commonality of features for our investments across the board, right? So deep technology is one big one, of course, the team, and so on and so forth. In China and in the US, you typically come across similar types of companies. In other words, you can find in both countries deep technology companies that have potential to build really large businesses because of the sheer scale and size of their respective markets. That is much harder to find in Europe and much harder to find in Israel. In Israel, the way that companies nowadays build themselves is effectively they market from the very get-go in the US, typically. Right, so this is not, it's technically an Israeli company, but in fact, their exposure is to the North American market. So as a result, what you want to do as an investor is when you invest in China and in the US, you can invest perhaps a little earlier because you know that there's still a path to building a significant firm. In Europe, you want to be a little more careful because you know that the path to building a larger firm is constrained by the size of the market. It's very fragmented typically. And so you want to invest sometimes at later stage where you already have gone through that first initial scaling and you actually see a business being scaled. There are other differences. For example, China historically has been the last 2 years has been very expensive. So even early stage, the US has been expensive, yes, but not as much. And in China, because money has to be invested in China, there's been a lot of money available to Chinese startups. So valuations have been very inflated. So investing in early stage is risky. Which for us meant that we looked at companies in the US that checked all these boxes, right? Deep technology, scalable market, great team, and reasonable valuation. In China, checking all these boxes was harder. I think it's a little easier now, but it's still not easy. Otherwise, because of our own thesis, right? We're not investing in application-based companies, we're investing in technology-based that apply this. Because of our thesis, we try to invest in companies that are effectively the same across different countries. And finally, there is maybe a difference, which is about sectors. So the US and Israel has been historically very strong in enterprise software, right? China historically has been quite strong in consumer focused. Security focused. Israel has been strong in cybersecurity. So I think the sector angle, you see differences between countries.
I see. Yeah, that's a really insightful thing about different stages across companies. Yeah, thank you so much.
Cool.
Antoine, we still have like 2 more questions. Do you still have a time?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, yeah. So please go ahead. Let's take a Taiho if you have a question, and then let's take a Met one. Right?
Yep. So hi, thank you for your
telling us your experience today. So my question is, so I personally think that the reason why the COVID-19 spread so quickly is because we had this kind of international globalization using all of the technology that we invented, like airplanes and things.
Yep.
Do you think if like AIs, for instance, become more normal in our lives, like more ordinary, if more technologies come up, do you think something like if the coronavirus pandemic was to happen again, it would be, do you think it would be worse?
Right. I think you're right about globalization and airplanes. Exchanges generally has definitely sped up the transmission of a biological disease in this case. And if used more virtualization, if we were able to meet virtually like we are here, obviously the disease would have spread less fast. I think that every type of connectivity or connection is going to bring its own set of benefits, but also its own set of problems, right? So we're talking about a biological virus that goes around and travels through airplanes, but the fact that we're all connected electronically now is conducive to non-biological or artificial viruses that could infect every single one of our machines, and do that in a heartbeat if it was done very well. So I think I don't think that AI solves all the problems it creates, AI or the greater amount of connectivity we have now on a virtual basis. I don't think it solves all our problems. It solves some, and it creates new ones. And each time we have to come up with new ideas as how to protect or defend ourselves against that. And I think machine learning can help, but it can help both ways. Right? It can help make systems and exchanges more stable and safer. But it can also help build systems that are, or vectors that are agile and adaptive and can transcend defenses, right? So it works both ways, and it's, as I said before, technology can be used to great benefits, but also to horrible goals. So when we have to be cognizant of both.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, I have a really quick question. So in your career, you were part of many emerging industries and maybe technologies. And then I'm wondering, what are other emerging industries that you are seeing are evolving right now, from what you see from the startups or based on your experience? What do you think?
Beyond AI and machine learning, you mean?
Maybe in that domain, or in general, like what are other industries that you are seeing like evolving, or like will actually take over the next 15 years or something?
Right. So obviously AI is very unique in that it is completely horizontal, right? Because every single process, product, service, workflow that we've organized has always been built on human intelligence. So if you begin to inject some amount of machine intelligence in that, then you can augment, evolve, transform these processes, product, services, workflows. So to me, AI is the primary transformer of all things going forward. With that said, there are related areas that I think are going to be very important. One is everything that has to do with telepresence and virtual reality. This meeting is great, but I think in 5 or 10 years time, we'll be able to have it virtually, but in person, right? So I'll be able to shake your hand virtually, essentially, or give you the elbow nowadays. I'll be able to do that, and we will feel the contact, and we will feel connected in a very different manner. I think that will change the world in many, many ways. I think encryption is a big one as well. Today, our encryption methodologies are very they're really legacy. It's one of the issues today is that you cannot do fully homomorphic encryption on data and models. So in other words, you have to decrypt the data before you run an algorithm on it. I think the moment that we have fully homomorphic encryption, which is FHE, in real time, working on reasonably powerful chips, but not massive systems that we need today to run them. So you can actually run your machine learning model on data that is fully encrypted without knowing anything semantically about what's underneath that. That's going to change a lot of things, especially around privacy. And we will need that in order to safeguard our privacy. So that's going to come. That's going to be a revolution because finally we'll be able to compute fully encrypted data. And so that's a major one. And I think the third, which I'm really excited about, is everything that has to do with advances in biotechnology, which is actually quite a bit related to AI machine learning. But the race to make us live longer and to develop extremely targeted drugs that can solve problems without creating secondary effects. That is the goal of biotech. And I think what we've seen over the last 30, 40 years in terms of progress, in terms of developing drugs and making us live longer, that's going to be the next 30 years are going to be 10x or 100x what we've seen. And the marriage between advanced biotechnology and machine learning is going to be a revolution. So I think that the person who will live 150 years or 200 years is already born, right? We don't know who that is, but we will start to see extremely long lifespan as a result of this, and that's going to create a lot of questions, actually, society-wise. Because if you can live 200 years and they can only live 70 years, then I really want what you have. So there's going to be a big discussion around who has access to these extremely advanced biotech based treatments and models, and we'll have to think society-wise as to how we manage that so that we don't have revolution in the streets.
Thank you so much. That was really insightful.
Sure, thank you.
Cool. If anyone has a question, maybe if he has a time, he can take like a last question. If not, it's already like an hour, so we can take a group picture and say thank you to Antoine for today's sharing your experience and thought.
Group picture is fun.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Jason, you are outside. Oh, wow.
Yeah, sorry, I'm walking back home.
Okay, no worries. Do you have any question?
I'm good for now, but the whole meeting was really insightful. So thank you so much.
Cool. All right, so everybody's done. Oh, yeah, German Queen is there too. He's in Singapore now. Awesome. Right. And also, sorry, what's the best way if anyone wants to reach out to you? What's the best way that they can reach out to you? LinkedIn, Twitter, or email?
Email, WhatsApp, WeChat, Telegram, whatever is good. I'll I'll make sure that you have all my details, Jane. You already have, I think, but I'll give
Okay,
it.
sounds good. So I'm going to share with everyone too. All right, so please, sorry. Please say cheers, guys. 3, oh, Jason. 2, 1, cheers.
Yes.
All right, all right. Thank you so much for your sharing your basically your time and sharing your experience and thought today. Again, it was very insightful. I really enjoyed.
So did I. Thank you, Jane, for all the great questions, and have a great day, all. It was a pleasure meeting you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care.
All right, have a good one, you guys.
Thank you so
Talk
much.
to you.
Bye.
Great. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.
All right, see you guys. Bye.